I had just moved into a new apartment. It was small, but it was perfect for someone like me. Someone who needed peace and privacy after a difficult breakup. The building was old, a little run down, but the rent was cheap, and I wasn't in a position to be picky. The neighbors kept to themselves, and I appreciated the quiet. One night after a long day at work, I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone. The rain was tapping gently on my window, and the soft hum of the city was the only other sound filling the room. I wasn't expecting any messages, but my phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. "Can you hear me?" I stared at the message for a moment, unsure of what to make of it. I assumed it was a wrong number or maybe a prank, so I decided to ignore it. I was about to put my phone down when another message came through, this one more direct. "Please answer. I'm here with you." My heart skipped a beat. I had no idea who this person was, and the fact that they had my number made me feel uneasy. Maybe it was a wrong number, but why were they saying such strange things? I almost brushed it off as a prank, but the tone of the messages felt different. There was something almost desperate about them. I tried to shake it off, thinking I was just overreacting, but I couldn't resist replying. I typed out a quick message. "Who is this?" I hit send and waited, not really expecting much of a response. But within seconds, my phone buzzed again. "I'm watching you right now." This time, I felt a cold chill run down my spine. Who was this person? How did they know where I was? I looked around my room, feeling paranoid. There was no one there, of course, just the quiet, dimly lit space that I had come to know as my own. I tried to convince myself it was just a prank, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It didn't help that the messages kept coming, one after the other, almost as if the person on the other end knew exactly when I was thinking of replying. I typed back, my fingers trembling as I pressed the keys. "How do you know where I am?" The response came almost immediately, but this time it was different. "Look behind you." My blood ran cold. The words on the screen seemed to freeze me in place. I couldn't bring myself to turn around. I stared at my phone, too afraid to even blink. For a moment, I thought about getting up and checking, but the fear of what I might find kept me rooted to the bed. I took a deep breath and told myself it was nothing, a trick of my mind. It had to be. But then another message came through, this time more urgent. "Look behind you. I'm right there." With shaking hands, I slowly turned my head to glance over my shoulder. The room was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the street lights outside my window. I saw nothing. No one was there. I felt a brief sense of relief, but it was quickly replaced by dread. The silence felt heavier now, as though something in the air had shifted. I turned back to my phone, hoping for some sign of normalcy. But the message that popped up next made my heart skip. In the hallway, I froze. The hallway outside my apartment was dimly lit, and I couldn't see anything from where I was lying in bed. My mind raced with possibilities, and the words kept repeating in my head, "In the hallway." I slowly slid out of bed, my feet meeting the cold floor. I tiptoed toward the door, holding my breath. Every sound seemed amplified now. The creak of the floorboards beneath my feet, the faint tap of the rain against the window. I opened the door slowly, barely making a sound, and peered out into the hallway. It was empty. There was nothing there. But still, the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. It felt like I was being watched. I didn't know why, but I had this overwhelming sense of wrongness in the air. It was as if something had shifted, as if the entire building was holding its breath, waiting for me to make the next move. I stepped back into my apartment, locked the door behind me, and sat on the edge of the bed, trying to calm my racing heart. The phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with another message. "I'm right outside your door." I couldn't think straight. My mind was clouded with fear, and I felt as though I couldn't escape this growing sense of dread. Was someone really out there? Or was this all some kind of sick joke? I glanced at the clock. Just past midnight. The silence was deafening now. I sat there, frozen, waiting for something to happen. My phone buzzed again. "I'm closer than you think." I felt my throat tighten. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to run, to get out of the apartment, but I couldn't move. It was as though I had become paralyzed with fear. I glanced out the window, but there was nothing. No one outside. Just the empty street, lit by the dim glow of the street lights. I grabbed my phone again, my hands shaking as I typed. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" There was a pause. I waited, my finger hovering over the send button, but no message came through. I looked down at the screen, and the silence felt suffocating. Suddenly, the phone buzzed again. "I'm waiting." The message was chilling in its simplicity, and just as quickly as it had started, the text thread disappeared from my screen. Every single message was gone, vanished, as if they had never existed. I checked my phone's message history. Nothing. There was no trace of any text messages from the number, no record of what had just happened. I felt my stomach twist in knots, and for a moment I thought I had imagined it all, but the fear still lingered in the air. The tapping sound from the hallway started again. Faint at first, but growing louder. It was slow, deliberate, like footsteps. They were here. The last text I received hadn't been a prank, and now I was trapped in my own apartment with no one to help. I grabbed my keys and ran out of the apartment, not looking back. I didn't stop until I was safely in the lobby, where I called a friend to stay with them for the night. I didn't dare go back to my apartment. And every time I get a text from an unknown number, my heart races, because I know now that someone or something is still waiting for me. The next day, I tried to convince myself that the previous night's events were just a figment of my imagination, a result of stress and paranoia. Maybe I had been overtired, overworked. After all, there had to be a reasonable explanation, right? But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. A gnawing sensation in the back of my mind that wouldn't let go. I had spent the night at a friend's place, far from the apartment that now felt more like a prison. The idea of going back there filled me with dread, but I knew I had to. My things were still there, and I couldn't afford to keep paying for a place I wasn't even staying in. So, late that evening, I made my way back. When I opened the door to the apartment, I immediately noticed how still it felt. The air was thick, as though it was holding its breath. The apartment looked the same. Nothing had been disturbed. But something was off. The silence felt heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves were pressing in on me. I set down my bag and walked into the living room, but the unease in my chest only grew stronger. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was just being paranoid, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. There was something here, something I couldn't see but could feel. It was as though the apartment had taken on a life of its own, watching me, waiting. I went to my bedroom to grab a few things I needed, hoping to quickly pack up and leave again, but as I opened the door, I stopped dead in my tracks. The air in the room was cold, so cold that I could see my breath in the air. I hadn't left the window open, and the temperature outside was mild. The chill made my skin crawl, but it was the feeling in the room that unsettled me most. There was something in there with me. I took a step back, but before I could leave, my phone buzzed. I froze. It was a text message from the same unknown number. The screen lit up with a message that made my stomach drop. "I'm still here." My heart pounded in my chest. How could this be happening? I had deleted the messages the night before, convinced that whatever had happened was a hallucination or a prank. But now, here it was again. Proof that something was wrong. Something was in the apartment with me, and it wasn't leaving. I typed back, desperate for an answer. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The response came quickly. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I looked around the room, my eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. The silence was suffocating now, and the coldness seemed to press in on me. I could feel my pulse quickening. Suddenly, I heard it, a faint sound. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but then it became clearer. It was a soft tapping, like fingers drumming on the floor. I turned to the door, half expecting to see someone standing there. But the hallway was empty. I stepped cautiously toward the living room, the tapping sound growing louder with each step. It seemed to be coming from inside the apartment, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly where. The sound was erratic, like it was moving around me, getting closer. I was paralyzed with fear. I could feel my heart racing, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. This couldn't be real. I had to be imagining things. But the tapping continued, persistent and steady. I wanted to scream, to call someone, but I was frozen in place, rooted to the floor by the dread that clung to the air. And then it happened. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something, just a shadow, darting across the hallway. I whipped my head around, but there was nothing there. The shadow had vanished as quickly as it had appeared. My breath came in shallow gasps, and I instinctively reached for my phone again. I opened it, desperate to make sense of what was happening. The screen lit up with another message. "I'm getting closer." The tapping was now right behind me. I spun around, but again there was nothing. Only the oppressive silence of the apartment. I could feel something in the room, something watching me, but I couldn't see it. Then, from the darkness at the end of the hallway, I heard a voice. It was faint at first, but then it became clearer. "I'm right here." My heart nearly stopped. It wasn't a human voice. It was distorted, warped, like it was coming from some deep, unnatural place. My hands shook as I typed another message. "Lola, please, leave me alone. I don't know what you want from me." The phone buzzed immediately. "You can't leave, not now." Before I could even process the message, the temperature in the room dropped again, even colder than before. It felt like the very air had thickened, pressing in on me. I heard the tapping once more, this time much louder and more insistent. It wasn't just coming from the hallway. It was coming from everywhere. From the walls, from the floor, from above me. It was as though the entire apartment was alive, pulsing with a dark energy that I couldn't escape. I turned toward the door, my legs barely able to support me, I tried to make my way to the exit, but before I could reach the door, it slammed shut with a deafening bang. I screamed, the panic setting in as I realized I was trapped. My phone buzzed again. "You're not leaving. You're mine now." The words sent a chill through my spine, and I looked around desperately for any way out. I rushed to the window, only to find it locked. The air outside dark and quiet. The apartment felt like a cage, the walls closing in on me. The shadows in the hallway seemed to grow darker, more menacing. And then I saw it. Something moving in the dark. A figure, tall and thin, standing just beyond the reach of the light. It had no face, just a void where its features should have been. I backed away slowly, my breath catching in my throat. The figure moved toward me, its presence suffocating. I felt as though I couldn't breathe, as though the very air was being drained from the room. I turned and ran for the door again, desperate to escape, but this time the handle wouldn't turn. It was stuck. The tapping grew louder, now echoing through every inch of the apartment, surrounding me. And then, the last message appeared on my phone. "You can never leave. You belong to me now." I didn't know how much time had passed, but I couldn't take it anymore. I forced the door open, ran down the stairs, and didn't look back. I haven't been back to that apartment since. The text messages stopped after that night, but the feeling of being watched never left. Sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll feel that cold presence just beyond the door, waiting. And I know deep down that it's still there, still watching, still waiting for me to return. Because some things don't let you leave,